You know, that reminds me of a story. In one of the earliest books written about medical hypnotherapist Milton Erickson, his student Ernest Rossi began analyzing word by word a hypnotic induction that Erickson did. And Erickson began a countdown hypnotic induction, and then I'll never forget the words of Rossi. At this point, we leave Erickson's transcript because he began to tell a story. Oh my God. A person who would later go on to become one of Erickson's top students did not get that the story was an essential part of the change. Now, if you think about it, everyone loves a story. All you have to do is be in a crowded room and say the words, you know, that reminds me of a story. And conversation stops as people want to hear the story. Every single religion has at its core really good storytelling. You know, in Christianity, there was the parables of Jesus. In Judaism, roughly half the Talmud is stories. And as we go through the ages, regardless of the religion, when people wanted their story, when people wanted their teachings to stick, they put them in a story. Now let's go fast forward to modern era. The most successful sales letter of all time is generally considered to be the Wall Street Journal letter. And what is the Wall Street Journal letter? It is a story. It is a long story, but essentially the entire letter is pretty much a story. Stories are powerful. Stories change people. Now, sometimes stories can be very quick. Other times, they're drawn out. Here's a hint. If you're telling a story and you want the story, you're working one-on-one with a person, it can be a long story. You'll have their attention. They'll pay attention to every word. But if you're working in print, then the stories have to come a lot more quickly. And if you're working in a business session, then the stories have to go even more quickly. You know, the great business investment tycoon, Warren Buffett, exclusively does his teachings through the use of story. He was once in front of a Senate subcommittee, and they were asking him questions, and every time they asked him a question, he answered with a story. And finally, someone said, Mr. Buffett, can you just give us a straight answer? And he said, this is the only kind of answer that I know how to give. Stories persuade, stories change. Now, Erickson's stories were complex stories. As a matter of fact, the title was used for them called Therapeutic Metaphor. And Erickson took care with some of his metaphors to ensure that every single word and every single element in the story had its basis in the actual experience. David Gordon, my friend and my teacher, calls that isomorphism. If you were to say to me, Harlan, you can have only one technique in your repertoire to use. I'm going to take away all of your knowledge of persuasion. I'm going to take away all of your knowledge of NLP. I'm going to take away presuppositions. I'm going to take away anchoring. I'm going to take away the meta model, the Milton model. As long as you left me one technique, I would still be a top persuader. And that technique is therapeutic metaphors. It is fun to learn, it's easy to use, and it's deadly effective. This is not the time for an entire training on therapeutic metaphor. David Gordon already did that in my offices a number of years ago, and you can order a set of those DVDs. But I urge you that if you have not subscribed to the list, get a copy of his book, Therapeutic Metaphors. It is a wondrous journey into how to change people's lives by telling them a story. This has been NLP Copywriting with Harlan Kilstein. See you tomorrow.